Hello and welcome to our third session on the rapid value cycle. My name's Matt Caneen. I'm the practice manager at Ignition. I'm joined today by Zjaén Coetzee, the Chief Technology Officer for Nexus Data and one of the co-authors of the Drive Rapid Results from Data, the book that we're going to be discussing today. Now, today we're going to discuss the key to achieving ongoing investment in data projects by aligning people, process and technology seamlessly. The plan is to help you as a data leader understand how to operationalize alignment in your data projects, enabling your data teams to deliver impact and not just output. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. There'll be a QR code that turns up in the corner at some point. And by clicking on that QR code, there we are, it'll take you to a page where you can apply for a rapid value cycle assessment. Zjaén, hi, welcome. Can you explain a little bit about that assessment and what it would provide for people?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. So the rapid value cycle assessment is a very lightweight questionnaire that the listeners can fill in. What this does is it's based on the rapid value cycle methodology from the book. And it helps you focus just on the main areas. It helps highlight what those key issues might be or opportunities that you can focus on to drive more value from your data investment. So once you fold it in, you'll get a little report back just to give you a diagnostic of what's happening. How did you score against certain of the dimensions, as well as make little recommendations around what the next things are that you can focus on. Thanks, Matt.
Great, excellent. And I think you get a digital copy of the book, is that right?
Yeah. So at the end of the call, it's we'll also make it available. Everyone that's in attendance will get a digital copy of the book as well.
Yeah. Excellent. So today we're absolutely happy to take questions from you, and we'll be keeping an eye out for any that you raise in the chat. Now, we mightn't get to them immediately. We'll certainly do our best to keep up to date, but there is a Q&A section we've got at the end. But feel free to put your questions in as we're going along, as they're relevant to the conversation that we're having. So let's get into it. Zjaén, let's start with a reality check. In your experience, what percentage of data projects do you believe secure ongoing investment beyond their initial funding?
Thanks, Matt. Good question. Yeah. So two angles to that. So one is a couple of years ago, they said, only 20% of any data analytics projects are successful. One of the most recent stats released by MIT in one of their research papers suggests that only 5% of all AI investments actually deliver any business value. Now, if we think about if you have a 95% chance of failure, the likelihood that your initial investment will either be reinvested in or you will get ongoing investment is slim to none. And this is really what we're seeing in the industry is people make the initial investment. 12 to 14 months in, CFO starts asking the question, where's my return on investment? Where's the value that's coming out of this project? And more than likely, most individuals can't answer it, and then investment either gets reduced or pulled, unfortunately. So it's very low. I mean, I would put it in like the 3 to 5% ballpark if I had to take a guess.
Yeah, wow.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, it's with that in mind, Matt. I mean, let's go one step deeper. When you hear owning data isn't enough, what does that immediately tell you about where most organizations are going wrong?
Yeah, it's an interesting phrase, that, isn't it? For me, just in general, if something has an owner, then in other people's minds, it's something they don't have to worry about. So it doesn't matter what that is. But data's the same. If you think that's owned by somebody else, not my problem. I can just let them look after it. But the reality is here that if we want this to work, everybody needs to be committed to the data and not just the individual or the owner. It really is a team game. Yeah. And we want to truly create value in our organizations. We've got to deliver across the enterprise and not in a single silo. So it's not enough to say, hey, we've got a data team that looks after that. I'm not involved. No, everybody needs to be involved. We've all got to get into it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's something we've also seen is many companies, I've appointed a data lead, I've appointed a chief data officer, a chief data analytics officer. I don't have to worry about data anymore. Unfortunately, data remains everyone's business if you want to do it right and get the most value from it. So as a follow-up question to that one, Matt, and as we're diving into what we refer to as quadrant 2 of the rapid value cycle, where we're focusing about people, processes, approach, and a bit about the data component as well. In this section, it talks about people first, process second, and technology last. For many organizations, that would go against their natural instinct. Why do you put people first when everyone else wants to talk about the latest AI tool? So why the focus on people? First, if the main hype and most of the talk is about AI tools, platforms, etc.
Yeah, look, it's so easy to get caught up in the technology, isn't it? We know that. As you say, everyone's talking about AI, but again, this can't be technology led. I mean, your example of only 5% being successful is just screams that can't be the way that it's led, because it doesn't lead to success. So we've got to have a user case that's business and therefore people aligned, which is why the people come first in the process. You know what I mean? So we've got to get these key stakeholders engaged. We've got to get them on board as the first step. Without the people, we can't get alignment to business outcomes. We can't understand what success looks like. And we need to understand the value that will be created by the engagement. I mean, in all my years of running these projects and programs, the ones that have been most successful are undoubtedly when we've got people with clear roles and responsibilities across the organisation and everybody buys it.
Yep, no, I agree.
Absolutely. And so, with that in mind, Zjaén, in your experience, who specifically do you believe we need to get on board as a key stakeholder for our data projects?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. It's so in the book we refer to something as a ringleader. Doesn't have any negative connotation to it. It's not a mafia boss or someone bad. It's really just somebody that has influence, and this can either be a senior executive or someone in the organization that when they talk, people tend to listen. And identifying that role first and having that champion in your corner is probably the most important individual to bring in from a people perspective. And the main reason from this is as a data leader, you know what you need to do, and you need to know that you need to focus on enabling value. But this is sometimes very difficult because you need to orchestrate IT teams and business teams and other people as well to get to that point of value. And they have other priorities and they've got other stuff that they focus on. So the ringleader is just somebody that helps you sort of bring those loose ends together so that you can focus on the task at hand, and that is, enabling value at the end of the day. Yeah. So with that in mind, I mean, it's we've seen this story play out so many times, Matt, where you have a situation where a technical team is so excited about a solution, but your business stakeholders can't see the value. How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, look, it's a common scenario, isn't it? The technical teams are all excited, but they're excited for the technology and not what the technology can provide. And it's your AI is a classic one. Yeah, we've got to do AI. Let's get running. What are we doing it for? Not sure, but I'm sure it'll work itself out of time. It's that classic. Here's the solution. Now, what's your problem again? And it just can't be that way. The only way to bridge the gap is to sit with the business, get them to articulate how this solution, when implemented, is going to do one of two things. It's going to make them $1 or it's going to save them $1. It's as simple as that. It's got to do one of those two things, be more efficient or help us grow. And if the business isn't able to articulate that and put at least some kind of nominal dollar figure to it, then we're probably putting our money in the wrong spot. Maybe we're sitting in the wrong room. Maybe we need to move and have a discussion somewhere else. So aside from that, the business really needs to commit to this, commit their time, commit their external and internal support for the program. And I think they're the key ways to bridge the gap. So I talk about needing to be committed, and in a good way, not in a bad way, similar to your influencer story. But following on from that, what do you believe are the biggest mistakes that the data leaders make when they're trying to get stakeholder buy-in for their projects?
Yeah, so sure, Matt. I think there's And this is not just personal opinion. This is stuff that we've really seen playing out, and this is a bit of a global problem, to be honest. Is that data leaders either focus way too much on the capabilities that the tech investment will bring to the table. So if it's now agentic AI, or a couple of years ago there was big hype around the big data thing. We just need to buy big data because now we can have unstructured data and it almost becomes, the entire conversation is around the technology and the capabilities, and a lot less around what the requirements are for the people, and the people that needs to use those platforms and the value that you'll get out of it from a business perspective. And where they do focus on people, they're focusing on the business buy-in and the support from the teams, instead of considering what buy-in and support they would actually need from their own teams. Right. So it's usually is, I've got this platform, I need to get this thing done. I just need to get the business to commit to this. But internally is, do you have the right teams? Do you have the right skills, the right capacity? And not taking that into account when trying to get this buy-in. And it's easy to say business needs to meet us halfway. It's not so easy to identify gaps within your own teams that might cause project delays or even possible failures. And adding to that, I think one of the other things that sort of, when trying to get that buy-in, is not being able to articulate why you want the platform or the problem that you're solving for. And this is a bit of a chicken egg scenario because in the book, and as we spoke about in the previous webinars as well, we brought the concept of value generating initiatives to the table. This is something that ideally business needs to be able to identify, to say, listen, these are the core priorities for us as an organization, and we then find the technology and the tools and the people, etc., that's required in order to meet or to enable that value at the end of the day. But if that's missing, and these investments are predominantly driven by the data teams, then most of the focus is on the tech, very less so on the people, and that's probably one of the reasons why the failure rates are so significantly high. Yeah,
it's crazy. And as you say, sometimes you've got to be honest with yourself and your teams, about the capability of that you have, and always be looking. It moves so quickly, some of this technology. If you look at modern data platforms, you look at BI tools, they all move really, really quickly. And so for an internal team to keep up, that can be hard. So there's got to be a commitment there to your training, to making sure you're partnering with the right people. So yeah, I hear what you're saying there. That's important. So actively encouraging people to get on the chat and ask some questions if they've got something about that. We've talked now about the people part of the trilogy, and so we're moving on now more to the process and the technology components that are part of that trilogy. So as we move along, we've mentioned that data project leaders often deliver a fit for purpose technical outputs, but they miss the business value. Can you break that down a little bit for us and what that means for you?
Yeah, sure, Matt. I want to use an example of something that we've been exposed to not too long ago with one of our customers, and their main focus was we need to use a modern data platform to solve a specific problem within revenue assurance. And the problem that they're facing is, with the current platform, they can only do analytics or run sort of their models on 10% of sample data, and not on the full set, just because of the sheer volumes. And they decided to make the investment to say, listen, but we're purely investing in this platform because we want to now be able to run this on 100%. So theoretically, the thought is if we're getting X value out of 10% and we now run it on the 100%, then surely we should get more value out of it. But unfortunately, the value for the 10% wasn't really ever properly measured and managed. So now making the bigger investment, you're sitting with a problem where they made the investment in the platform and they can now conduct this sort of full analytics on the entire set. The problem is they focused on one problem in isolation and didn't think about the bigger business impact and the bigger business value from that investment. So let's call it, the investment that they needed is $10 million, and the expected value from that one use case might have been $8 million, right? So it doesn't really warrant it, but they feel like it was worthwhile. if they took the approach differently around sort of this from a process perspective, and not focusing on the capability of the platform, but rather on what the value would have been, more than likely they would have had, additional 3 or 4 additional cases for value. And I mean, it's when we looked at it after the fact, just things like there was ability to increase customer spend. There was ability to measure attrition of customers, so retaining a lot of more customers within the base, being able to provide more services. So not only did they make this big investment into the platform, but they really missed the real use cases for value that unfortunately could have been enabled with the same teams, with the same capability. And this is usually the thing that we speak about continuously throughout the book, is sort of what's the process that you're following in order to get to something. And also that initial demand. It's such an important thing where you need to lead with what's the demand within the organization currently in terms of value enablement and value creation. And first consolidate and consider that before you start building out anything else. Because more than likely, there might be an additional 4 or 5 big things that you can solve for from your investment. But because you're looking at it in isolation, you're missing those components. And then if you have to do it after the fact, then it becomes more expensive, which means is your probability to increase value or actually gain any value actually then diminishes quite significantly. So just starting with the technology capability rather than identifying those high value impact or value cases would not have only justified the investment, but it would have given them a stronger case to bring in more skilled individuals and the ability to streamline business processes at the same time. So it's really about understanding the process that you need to follow in order to really get to that point of value. We almost say that you almost need to bake value measurement into that process from a analytics delivery perspective. And unfortunately for data people, that's not something that's top of mind. You just want to get the data pipeline up and running. You want to get the platform up and running. You want to do the configuration and do all sorts of fancy stuff and encryption at rest and in flight and whatever. And the one thing that you don't think about is, well, how am I going to measure the value from the work that I just did effectively? So there's a bit of a gap there. So the process that we suggest is really starting with sort of the value in mind, and making sure that everything else that you do from a technical perspective just aligns to it, right? So you start with your demand consolidation, put a process in place to bring in new demand, make sure that value measurement informs part of that validation process as well. So with that in mind, Matt, and this might be a bit controversial, but why should technology come last when everyone else is talking about AI and advanced analytics? What specific process needs to be in place to ensure insights actually get used?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. I know some questions. We've got some in the chat, and we'll get to that following from this, even though it's the backward, but we'll address that. So thank you for those in the chat. Look, the key here is to actually track, and you mentioned it in your previous thing. You need to track what people are using and how they're using it. So once again, that's about people and their actions that they're taking, not specifically the technology itself. I mean, for things like advanced analytics use cases, it's quite easy to have a monitoring application that shows which reports are being accessed most frequently, which elements of the dashboard are being interacted with by the business users. That's pretty simple these days. So you've got to be able to do that. And then I think the other key thing is you've got to embed the analytics into the process. So take the analytics to the people rather than having just as a separate thing over on the side. You will have your analytics over there, but if you can take elements out of that and embed it where they're making the decision, then that's where you start to get value. That's when it's the context of that is right. I need that answer now. Here it is. I can make an informed decision. I go. So embedding in that part of the process, there should also be, I think, a data review process somewhere along the line within the organisation. And they've got a couple of roles. One's to understand new data and what that impact can have on the data landscape, but also consistently review how your data is being used and consumed. If the dashboard hasn't been used for a quarter, then it probably needs to be turned off or archived in some way. And I think that's the opportunity to tidy up. Don't leave things and end up with 400 reports that no one reads. actively go and see who's using what, how often they're doing it, and if it's not being used, then let's take it out. Might have been a good idea at the time, but things change.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, it's such an important component of the rapid value cycle as well, is when you get to this quadrant 2 that we're now speaking about, and you really enabling value, and you really delivering that insights. Unfortunately, data analytics on its own cannot deliver any value.
Yeah.
Right? It needs to be embedded somewhere. It needs to be adopted some way. And I think that's where, a lot of people said, but we made the investment and we delivered the insights. We delivered that actionable insights that everybody's talking about. What did we do wrong? You forgot to embed it back into your organization to actually get people to use it. And that's why you see so many of these wonderful dashboards or AI models and stuff just not end up being used, or get into what we refer to as POC purgatory, right? You just stuck there. You can't get out of it. So I mean, it's Matt, when you get to technology decisions, how do you ensure that they are aligned with the people and process foundations you've built? And can you share an example where putting technology last actually led to better technological choices?
Well, I've got a bit of a personal story about this, and I hope, bear with me, but I think it gets the point across. But I recently went to dinner with my wife at a nice restaurant in Sydney for our 10th anniversary. Now, we're greeted at the door, we're welcomed, shown to our table, drinks were ordered, and then a waiter came to run through the menu. Now, at that time, he asked, "Are you here for a special occasion?" And we said, "Yep, it's our 10th anniversary." So now from that moment onward, every single person who came to our table to wait on us wished us a happy 10th anniversary. After the dinner, we're presented with a little dessert and a card that says happy 10th anniversary. Now, what's the point of that? Nice story, Matt, but why is that important? The point I want to make here is that it was the commitment of the staff member who learned that one piece of data. So they're there in the moment, interacting with us, and they learn 10th anniversary. And then they followed a process. Now, that process might have been to go write it on the board in the kitchen. I don't even know what the process was, right? But that then led to this fantastic customer experience for us at the restaurant. It was just lovely. It really was, and it made a huge difference. And if they're in the business of customer experience, which they are in dining, that little nugget and their commitment to the process was the thing that did it. Now, as I said, I don't know if it was a post-it note on a board, but the point here is that it had nothing to do with technology. It was the people. So the person who captured the data, but also then all the other staff who committed to consume that and use it, is what made the process successful. And ultimately, the technology wasn't even involved. Now, a follow-on story to that, though, I said that same story at a data event in last year, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, "Did you get an email a couple of months out from your anniversary saying we'd like to see you for your 11th anniversary dinner?" Yeah. And the answer to that was no. So they missed a little trick, and this is where the technology could have helped them. I do get emails from them regularly saying, "Hey, we've got a special, come and have dinner." But they needed to put that little bit of information against my record in a CRM that pops up and goes into another process. So there's still constant improvement, and technology can play a part in it. Absolutely, it would have helped in that instance. But
I mean that's such a wonderful practical example of, there's also because of the response that you got, you were willing to make that first investment around spending more money during the anniversary dinner. But your recurring investment would have paid off if they actually sent you an email to say, you're about a month or 2 months out from your 11th anniversary. Do you want to do something special? Let's arrange something for you. And this is very similar to the investment conversations happening between the data teams and the CFOs, is if you can talk their language and you give them the information that they need to make a sound decision around investment, it makes it so much easier. And sometimes it's just that one bit of data that's missing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we might just jump to one of the questions here. I'll bring up for you, Zjaén, for a second. So I'll pop the question up here. So Sam's asked, "I'm interested in an example of where aligning people was the cause of a project derailing. And what did you do to get it back on track?"
Yep. Okay. There's many of those. So I'm going to pick the one that's the least contentious, and this is a good example of I think not following a sound process towards delivering insights, if you will. So a couple of years ago, we get a requirement to say, we've got customers that are leaving us in droves, like a lot. We need to run an intervention in order to sort out this problem. So there's a few things that we need, but the first thing that we'll need from a business perspective is we just need to have a churn model that tells us who's going to leave. That's it. And as the data teams, you get the requirement from business and you go and you execute it. And back then you spent 3 to 6 months building this very robust, very nice looking churn model that has like 90% accuracy at the end of the day. And you come back to business and you say, well, look, I've now delivered it. And at that point, as a data team, you felt like you did something and you added value and you delivered something to business. But that's sort of where the entire thing derails, where business now says, oh, it's nice that we have this, but we're now not entirely sure what to do with this. So what do we do with this output? Do we need to put it into systems? Do we need to flag customers and when they call in, we know that they have a high likelihood of leaving us? Do we run, proactive campaigns to retain them? What's that next logical step that we need to do? And at some point, business gets to a point of making a decision, and now we have the conversation with IT to say, we're not asking a lot. We're just asking that on these 4 main systems in our CRM and order management system and billing, you now just need to add a little flag in the system that says this customer's got a high probability of churning. And while you add it, when a call center agent gets the call in, you just need to have a pop-up that says this customer is more than likely going to leave and there's going to be good reasons to leave it. And then IT says, listen, this is a great idea. Unfortunately, no one involved us in this process. And this is not something that we can do now because we have 10 other priorities and we've got quarterly releases and other systems going live and launching. So we can't do this now. So they're not aligned. The call center wasn't aware that there's going to be a complete new brief. So you're sitting with 3 teams, your data, your IT, and your business teams not being on the same page. And unfortunately, an investment that was made into platform licensing skills and actually building out a model towards the hours that were spent, countless hours by business to try and figure out what they want to do with this model, that misalignment just caused a lot of confusion. And cost the company, effectively a lot of money at the end of the day, because all the teams could have been busy with something else that more than likely would have generated more value. And the best way to then get it back on track, and I mean, it's this, unfortunately, this was probably like the 5th time that this has happened within that specific team, mainly because the data teams never knew that they had the authority or even, common sense sort of dictates, like you could have asked the question, are the other teams aware of the fact that we're going to build this thing and how are you going to end up using it, right? Because as a data team member, you just take instruction from business and you build something. You just want to look technically brilliant and don't think about the repercussion down the line. And the way that we got that is for any new project is that we had now a change forum where the request would come in and the technical teams as well as the business teams would say, but it's nice that we want to do this, but what's the implication and who needs to be involved? So instead of now just executing for 6 months, it took about a month to do a formal assessment. But now every time something is built, you can actually go and implement it formally, not having that issue. And this is something we see often. The challenge there is it's misalignment of priorities because it's, IT is focusing on something, data is focusing on something, business is focusing on something. The other challenge there is also that there's more than likely misalignment around what they deem value to be, right? Yes. Not all of them focus on business value to a greater extent.
Well, that's fantastic and leads beautifully into another question that we've had here on the chat, which I'll bring up now. And it talks here about examples of, reticent business stakeholders into a data project when they're, the business people are just too busy to engage. You talked about business before. We didn't have time. We've moved on. We've got a lot of other priorities. What are some of the sort of things you can do or, challenges that you face with that, Zjaén?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you drive, and this is where the dangerous bit comes in, is if you drive technology or the stuff that needs to be done from a data team perspective, you've already lost the plot. Because you're always going to get to business and they're always going to say, but we are too busy and we can't do this, and we have other priorities, and that's the challenge. I mean, it's we've seen this play out so many times. Somebody says, but you are the data team, just do something intuitive, come back to us with a recommendation, and then we'll see how we can implement it. And we've seen these things play out, right? So if it's customer segmentation or recommender models, you go and you build the thing, you bring it back to business, and you just need some of their time to meet you halfway, to give inputs, because you're not the expert in business, right? They are the business experts. They need to tell you what to do. And then you get ghosted. They don't respond on your emails. They don't pitch up for your meetings. These type of things happen. And the core challenge there is that misalignment around priorities again. So how we typically solve for this is that most of the conversation starts with the business people first. So either one is you start with business first and you identify the cases for value and you make sure that it's high up on their strategic priorities. And from there, you sort of spin out the data initiatives that's required to meet their priority. Or from the other end is where you now as a data team, you're already busy with something and you really know that this is something that's going to add value. The unfortunate thing here is that you're going to have to sort of play the field in terms of relying on somebody like a ringleader or a senior, and being able to articulate the possible value from the work that you're doing in order to get that business investment, right? So that you can go to that business unit to say, but this is a priority. We really need to focus on this. We understand you've got 10 other things that you're doing, but we need to focus on this. The challenge is because most people don't have data confidence, which is also something that we speak about in the book. Because they're not data confident and they don't understand what data can do for them, most business people would also shy away from using data at all. Right, so they would trust their gut and do the things that they've always been doing. And so there's also that thing is, even if they asked for something, they might not be fully convinced that what you are delivering is really going to change the way that they are doing things at the end of the day. So there's a few things there. One is drive it from a business perspective. Two is see if you can rely on somebody like a ringleader. Three would be is if you don't have a ringleader and you can't get it from a business perspective, from a data point of view, is being able to articulate that value to see if you then can't get the necessary buy-in and support in order for them to meet you halfway. Because the unfortunate thing is, and this is where like in any company that you walk into, ask the business, like, we're just very busy. We just got stuff to do. Cool. Is it things that's adding 10x value, or is it things that's adding 100x value? Because too many people spend time on the 10x value things and not the 100x stuff. And that's the things that you can unlock with data. So there's a bit of a misalignment there as well. But this is every single company that you're going to walk in, you're going to have this problem. Up until the point that you go into an organization, we've got a very good example of that locally in South Africa with Discovery Health. It's a company that is driven by data first. So it's on everyone's agenda, it's on everyone's radar, it's on everyone's priority. So when somebody comes in with an idea that's really going to drive big impact for business, everyone listens. Unfortunately, most organizations are not there yet. So there's a bit of training that needs to happen and a bit of, uplifting that data confidence within the powers that be.
Yeah, that's great. I've always said that, anything that's in a data strategy needs to align with the business strategy, and it needs to be, it needs to go up to one of the pillars. If it doesn't do that, then we're in the wrong spot. Hey, Zjaén, I'm interested in something here, like how you prevent your team from falling into the shiny object syndrome, when the new technologies come along and, everyone's into it. AI is a classic example of recent times. But, how does that relate to delivering output versus delivering impact, which is what we talked about at the top of the program? Give us an example, and what sort of questions should our data leaders ask before they adopt the new technologies for their projects?
Yeah, no, good question, man. I mean, it's if we go back to sort of, only 5% of all AI investments actually yield any business value. So not substantial business value, any business value of any sort. It really does tell the story of people are chasing hype and sort of the shiny object syndrome, rather than focusing on things that really can deliver value to the organization. And I mean, it's the easiest example of this, and it's only because it's sort of where everyone is at this point in time, and it's unfortunate. It's good for the technology as well. I mean, it's people need to sort of rush to it so things can start maturing, but there's a lot of hype around AI, and specifically agentic AI in recent months. And what data leaders tend to do, and I mean, I'm talking out of experience because I was also there up until the point that we got to the realization of why we keep failing in what we're doing, is that we have this tendency to see something new, and then we try to identify use cases in the business to bring it back in. Right, so we're doing it the other way around. So firstly is I've over the last, let's call it 5 years, learned that I don't ever want to talk about use cases or case studies. You know, it's the fact that it worked for one organization doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else, and the fact that it was driven by a use case doesn't mean it was the possible thing that had the most value. So you're focusing on these use cases, and what ends up happening is you now have this shiny object, and either you've made like a small investment or you're running a free version of it. And then you end up running like a headless chicken to lines of business trying to identify these use cases. I just want to find something where I can apply this. You know, I know that it's new and it's complex, but surely in our organization there should be something where we can apply this. And I mean, it's very similar to what we saw with 5G launching a couple of years ago. 5G was supposed to change the world and everything else that we live in, right? And it never got to that point of maturity. There were some use cases enabled in manufacturing and mining and logistics and those type of things, but it really didn't have the impact that people expected it, because they didn't find a problem and then went to develop the technology. They developed the technology and then tried to retrofit it towards identifying problems within organizations. And we've recently dealt with a customer where they've received a lot of pressure from, and this is the bad part, right? It's not even the technical teams driving this conversation. The customer's board said, listen, we need to have widespread AI adoption in the organization. We want to see AI everywhere. If you're showing us any slide decks, any presentations, having any conversations, AI needs to be the hot topic. It needs to be top of mind, because we need to show this to the shareholders, because this is what they're expecting. And obviously, if you're a company and you're not talking about AI, people are reluctant to invest in you, because are you falling behind and in this entire AI race thing? So it's sort of being driven from a top down. And other than this new technology will also be left behind if we don't start using it. And there was no substantiated case for this investment at all, right? So it makes no sense that so much time and effort, or even the investment in the platform, should have been made. And this doesn't mean that the technology cannot add or unlock any business value. It's more the fact that it led with a use case example and then led to failure, rather than saying, what do we need as a business? What are we focusing on from a value perspective? And then identifying the right technologies or the mix of it. And what I found is, if you take that approach, more than likely, in most cases, you will find something tangible where you can now apply some of this latest technology to help solve business problems. So from this case for investment could have been made, for instance, to reduce efficiency, right? So for instance, if we take it from this perspective, we could have said, well, we know that in this business, they have a very large back office doing manual processing of Excel sheets, PDF files, etc., mails that's coming in. And more than likely, you can deploy an agent that takes care of all of that work, that now frees up 40% of the back office's time, so that they can focus on the things that actually drives business impact and business value. Like your previous example, proper customer experience, reaching out to customers and making sure that they're receiving the service that they should have. And if we then brought in that automation and we could reduce the effort by, or increase the efficiency by 40%, this will not only lead to faster turnaround times, but it will also lead to faster value realization, right? Because now you have a proper case for value, rather than just saying, let's chase the hype and get the platform in. So we need to shift the conversation of pure hype to actual tangible business impact. And this doesn't mean we change the conversation at all. It's just we change the order of the conversation. So we don't say agentic AI is something, we need to find a use case. We say, we've got a case for value. Is there an opportunity to use agentic AI to enable that value or to deliver that value that we're expecting?
Yeah, great. I'm just checking the chat out while you've been speaking there, Zjaén. Thank you. Trevor brings up a question that I think is relevant if we can just jump on it now. So he wants to repeat and perhaps expand on what you think he heard, say about the current evidence of return on AI. So that was at the top of the program, if you like.
There's a very nice study that was conducted by MIT. There's a few other people that obviously also did this over the years. I think prior to this, it was 13%. They said only 87% of any AI investments actually, first of all, deliver on what was expected. Secondly, deliver on business value. The recent one with MIT says that effectively 95% of all investments that you'll make into AI will more than likely not lead to any business value, which means it's either going to be POCs, experimentation, things that you're going to try. You probably don't have a clear case for value. So it means that you're going to burn through cash, effectively not really see that realization. And it's quite scary to think about. I mean, it's Matt, if you were a gambling man and I told you you've got a 5% odd of winning, more than likely you won't take that gamble. And we as data leaders are asking business to take a gamble and make an investment into something that globally is now being recognized as only having a 5% success rate of delivering value. And I think the challenge there is, and it's back to my previous answer to your question, is that the reason why we're seeing that 5% is more than likely because we are leading with the technology and not leading with the case for value within the business.
Absolutely. I've got another one here, which I might have a go at. So advice on working with senior technical individual who's focused on the platform and model perfection and help them shift to being into value. It's a good one. This, I've worked with technical teams my whole life. I've been technical. I can officially still write a line of code, but I describe this as going into a selfish zone. Whereas the only person that's going to win out of that piece of work that you're doing is the individual doing it. The client doesn't get a better experience or any more value. It's hard for me as running the business to charge the client, so I'm losing because you're giving away time. And it isn't about value, and it's about perfection. And it's what's the line? Don't let good get in the way of perfection. You just need to start. You need to get things in and done. There's multiple types of cars you can get. You can, if you want to pay for the Audi and get the Audi, that's great. But sometimes a good old Toyota or a Kia will get you there just fine. Thanks very much, and it'll perform. And so it's value at that point. So I think that's something I personally thought you've got to be really careful about with your technical teams over time. So you spoke about measurement. In your mind, like, what role does measurement play in the process design stage? So, how do you make we've got this accountability for the business outcomes in your workflow? How do we make it actually happen?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's if we start with the fact that we can only improve on things that we measure. It's such an important thing to build in measurement into the process of building anything. So if it's now, building a data analytics platform, or actually delivering a product or a solution on top of that platform, or being, doing integration between data, taking data from an operational system into data platforms, whatever it might be, there's always a reason as to why you're doing it, right? And a very bad reason that people would typically say is, but we want to enable something. Like, we need to do this because we want to enable actionable insights. But the question would be, is why do you need actionable insights? Surely there should be a rationale around it, right? You almost need to always ask that next question or the next step around it. So measurement ultimately needs to form part of the design instead of just doing it after the fact. So when you're building out your process around whatever you're doing, think about the 5-6 steps down the line where somebody now is going to use the output or use the platform that you've created, and what do they deem value to be, and are you able to measure the success of it, right? So if the value is that we know that every time somebody looked at this dashboard, they made a decision that had a $1 million impact to the business, and but we're only seeing that only one person a month actually accesses this dashboard. How do we drive up those numbers and adoption, right? Because that's sort of that measure, the value measurement KPI that you can put into place to say, but these are the KPIs from a technical perspective that we need to track to ensure that down the line, people actually use it. Similar to the churn model examples, if you built the model that's giving you customers that you need to retain, if business doesn't use those lists and drives campaigns or sends things to call centers, but you have a KPI that says you need to generate 1,000 new customer leads per day and provide it through that funnel, and that number starts slipping and you're now sitting at 200 customers or 50 customers a day, then you can improve it because you need to have that consistent 1,000 funnel in order to generate value at the end of the day. So that's sort of where you bake in measurement as part of the process. And at the start, you would have identified those KPIs that had to be met. And then the process needs to ensure that those KPIs are measurable, and more so when there's a process that needs to be taken into account to improve that KPI, improve that value that you'll get out of it. Because, it's without measurement, ultimately, Matt, you can't drive accountability.
Yeah, 100%.
And this is a funny concept, but almost holding, we talk about it, and we'll probably unpack it in one of the future webinars as well, the concept of value attribution. But how do you hold the data team accountable for their contribution towards value generation at the end of the day?
Okay. Look, I'm just keeping an eye on the time here too, Zjaén. We might kick over to the sort of orchestration across the enterprise component, the third segment we're going to talk about today. Big phrase, orchestration across the enterprise. It sounds complex. How do we make it practical for data leaders who, already stretched thin trying to manage their people, their budgets, their people going into the selfish zone, the business people that don't want to talk to them, that don't want to do their testing? It's a nightmare. How can we help them?
Yeah, it's I'm probably going to give a very controversial answer, but this is sort of a moment for self-reflection for many of the data folk as well, because it took me some time when I had this revelation the first time. Is we're almost looking at it from two perspectives. So the first perspective, or the first question that we ask, is why are these data leaders spread so thin? Are they just doing busy work, fighting fires, or they're actually working on high impact, high value projects within the organization? So if they're only focused on value enablement, then and they're not swamped with mundane or work due to poor demand management, then the answer is simple. They need to identify somebody with the ability to help drive that impact at scale. And this is where we be bringing in a new role that we refer to as a data value architect, or somebody that can help you orchestrate the lines of business. Because as a data team, to put all these moving parts together is very difficult. It's very difficult for a data team to have influence in many cases. So you need to almost rely on somebody that can do that. And we found that this is a role that typically would sit within your strategy office or results realization office, or your digital transformation office. You would have somebody that has a shared interest in the stuff that you deliver, but also a shared interest in making sure that what you deliver gets embedded back into the organization. So that you're sort of orchestrating this across the organization a bit more better. But it's I think for the second part is when you have poor demand management, those type of things, you need to start figuring those ones out to make sure that you can limit yourself and not keep too busy, right? Because this is the weird thing, Matt, is because we don't clearly measure the value and the impact that we as data leaders make. We measure our value and contribution in the organization towards how busy we are.
Yes.
And that becomes detrimental, because then we create work for ourselves and we make ourselves busy, and we keep pulling work from the organization to justify our existence by saying, but we're very busy. Look at all the stuff that we're doing for everyone. But if you're looking at what value are you adding in that work, it might be slim to none. So I think for today's conversation, I think really deals with having somebody neutral that focuses on that value enablement, and that can work closely with the business, IT, and data teams to orchestrate that value. And data leaders generally are not well equipped to do this, as their main focus would be the enablement of value, right? They want to focus on enabling value, not bringing or herding the cats and bringing everyone together. The value itself comes from business, IT, and data working together to realize that value, as data analytics on its own cannot create any business value, as we said, and it needs to be embedded back into business somehow.
Yeah. And, if you look at the skills that data leaders need, to develop these things, for me, it's all about communication and effective expectation management. I remember back in the day I was doing public speaking, and one of the techniques that they taught you was that you tell people what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. Now, it's a bit cliche, sure, but it really does help you set and manage expectations by being just really clear. It's being clear in your language and inclusive in your approach. I think these are the skills that our data leads have got to learn. So look, we're getting towards the tail end. We've got 10 minutes left, and we're looking for some takeaways. So as we move towards the end of the session, if someone is watching the webinar and can only do one thing tomorrow to improve stakeholder alignment, what would you pick?
So I'm going to make this very simple, because it's very difficult to learn the hard skills and do the other stuff. And not everybody's going to have time to read the entire book, but I think it's really just changing the way that we approach conversations and use value as that universal language. So if you're a data leader, if you're a business person, and you're having the conversation with one another, let value be sort of the point of departure for those conversations, and really start on, from that point of departure in terms of what generates value for the organization. So don't think about, what does business deem to be value? What does the data teams or IT teams deem to be value? What is the things that's on that company scorecard that is either, as we spoke about not too long ago, Matt, about, either increasing revenue, decreasing costs, decreasing risk. That should be the main things. And if you can tie what you're doing back to that, and you just start changing the way that you approach conversations, that's probably going to be the best thing that you can take away from the session.
Okay, brilliant.
So Matt, I mean, it's so other than changing the approach to conversations, what is the first step data leaders should take to shift from delivering output to delivering impact?
Yeah, for me, it's really defining what business success looks like and making sure that you can measure it. So like ingesting data into the warehouse or the lakehouse, transforming the data, creating the dashboard for business users, all outputs. Yeah. But impact, reducing the time to deliver to the users from 3 days to 15 minutes, saving operational costs, increasing the win rate of converting leads to opportunities. That's impact, and it's measurable. So if you as a data leader are struggling, with your ongoing investment for your data projects, the metrics and measures that I believe you should focus on to demonstrate value are all business related. Exactly as you said, all business related. It's nothing to do with the tech. It needs to be defined by the business users and not by the technologists. And that's the stretch, that's the gap. That's what, we as the leaders have got to be able to do. So, John, we're going pretty well. We've got a few minutes left. Any final sort of thoughts on how this people process technology approach specifically helps with securing continuous investment?
Yeah, I mean, it's so for those that sort of going to go through the rapid value cycle, read the book, you'll do the assessment, you get some feedback from it. I think the one key bit, specifically for technical people, would be to understand is this delivering insights is really sort of that intersection of people, platform, and approach. And if you use those three collectively and focus on how they can generate value, that will ensure future investment. If you just want to enable platform in an isolation of people, you're never going to really get to that value engine. So platform on its own cannot create value. The intersection of people platform approach is actually where that value is enabled, and it happens, that's sort of where you're going to require that investment to make it done. So it's either going to be time or money that needs to be invested. And if your investment is clearly understood and you know that you're ready to make this investment, then the only other question left to ask is the value you're expecting from this investment significantly higher or lower than the value that you're expecting to generate from it? And if the answer is no, you're going to spend this money, you're not going to realize it, maybe go and find additional use cases and I'm saying this use cases lightly, it's more having the conversation with business to identify cases for value and see if there's more of that you can bring back to my previous example of only focusing on one problem, rather see if there's additional problems or additional opportunities to create value to justify that investment. And if the answer is no, it's no. I mean, we're always looking for a yes, but if you're going through this process and the answer says Excel is good enough for now, or you're good enough with 2 data engineers, you don't need 10, then you stick with what you have. And I think by taking this approach, you ensure that all investment requirements into people, platform, and approach remains documented and defendable. And if somebody asks, what value are you enabling, you can provide a clear answer. And then by showcasing this value early on and having the ability to track it, not only protects your current investment, but also sets you up for future investment and requirements for those investments. Matt, as what is your key message for data leaders who feel stuck in the prototype phase and can't get their projects scaled?
Yeah, you mentioned that prototype phase earlier on, didn't you, Zjaén? And it's for me, it's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. So you just chunk things down, start small, deliver all the way to the business. So don't just sit here and just run everything into the pipelines and think that's our job. Pull in a handful of tables, get it all the way out to the edge and give it to the business user, demonstrate the value, measure it, and then rinse and repeat. So it's about that quick speed to get there. It avoids all that perfection that was part of the question that we had there before. And if we can get speed to value and speed there, they're more likely to go again. Absolutely, they will go again, 100%.
Yeah.
So, Zjaén, we've got a couple of minutes left in wrapping this up. Obviously, if you'd like more information about the rapid value cycle assessment, follow the link in the QR code. And as I said, you will get a free complimentary digital copy of the book. Is that right, Zjaén? Yep.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think maybe just to add to that, I mean, this is one of those books where you can read it in any order. And I think based on today's conversation, sort of, you can skip a few chapters and you can directly go to people, platform, and approach to get a better view of what that entails and the frameworks around each one of those. Because I think it's sometimes it's the obvious things that we miss. And I think in those chapters, what we try to do is just provide enough information so that you can see the intricacies and the working parts. And this is really like a dual purpose, right? So if you're a data lead and you read it, it's not written in a technical way, so you can easily consume it. You can understand what the impact is of those things in your business. But secondly, as a data person, if you read it, you will also understand that, how do you convey or turn what you're doing, convey that message back into the concept of value to have the conversations with the people that need to make the investments into your projects.
Brilliant. And there are a lot of different processes and tools that you can use, in reading the book. It's fantastic. I think that's one of the key things about it. It's very practical. You've got here's a process you can follow, or here's a methodology, or a set of actions you can take. So I think it's great. I encourage everybody to get out there and have a little go. So on that note, Zjaén, thank you for your time today and your wisdom, as always. Another very insightful session. Thanks to everybody for coming along and joining us and giving us an hour of your time. I really do truly appreciate that. Keep an eye out for the next session with Rapid's approach to delivering insights, which should be hitting your inbox anytime soon. So wherever you logged into it, look out for it again. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thanks all.